All right. Oh, it looks like we're live. Hello, everybody. Does it sound like I'm in an airplane hangar?
Sure does. What happened there?
Oh, I'm going to have to turn off my air conditioning, it looks like. Let's see. Where is... I haven't even noticed. Is Kevin in yet? Let me start. All right. I just started NosillaCast just for Kevin.
Kirshen.
Kirshen's here. Hi, Kirshen. It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been too long. Long time no see.
Definitely. All right. Daniel can see video on the site. Video said it was 451.5. Huh? What's John talking about, Steve?
Probably the website. Let me go look.
Have you put the new episode in? They're saying it says 633. Did you do the links?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Refresh the page then. So, yeah, have you double checked you can see it?
Yeah, I'm seeing the video at podfeed.com/live.
Podfeed.com/live.
And it is tonight's video.
All right, I better turn this off. I can't stand to listen to it.
George.
I
didn't even see him there.
All right, we got the usual suspects in the house. We've got Steve and Brett and Kevin and Daniel and George, Jino Choi. We've got Stephen and Kirshen and John and Richard and Sandy.
And what is that nice floral arrangement by your ear there?
This is homegrown plumeria, which it took us years to get our first couple of flowers. Kevin says NosillaCast is good.
That's the flower they make the Hawaiian lays out of?
Yes, and they smell really good. So I'm going to just go like this the whole time.
Reminds me of an episode of Star Trek, but
oh, it does? That's disturbing. All right, let me do a little playback here and see. But you guys, can you hear the little fan in the background?
No. Oh, by the way, I have mine going. Can you hear that?
No.
Okay.
I've got it on my legs anyway. It's hot here. It is
up to about 84.
Yeah,
maybe 85. I'll check our weather station.
All right, I'm going to play. Let me see whether you get any. If you can hear the audio, guys. Hi, this is Allison Sheridan of the NosillaCast podcast, hosted at podfeed.com. Okay, that lag is going to kill me.
Ooh.
Okay, I think that was when I had the fans on. Let's just do that again, just in case. Hi, this is Allison Sheridan of the NosillaCast podcast, hosted at podfeed.com.
It got up to 88.3 today.
Did it really?
Yeah.
Wow.
That's hot for us.
Hi, this is Allison Sheridan of the NosillaCast podcast, hosted at podfeed.com.
Recording sounded good.
All right, good. Okay. Get rid of that. Get together.
Rose
is here.
Finally.
All right. Stephen, I hope your whatever illness kept you home is a mild one. Glad you could join us in spite of that, or because of that. All right, here we go. Intro music.
Who are you talking to right now?
Kiwi Spoon.
Oh, Stephen?
Yeah, he is homesick. Did you hear that little crack just then?
It may just be playback for you. I don't think, does that come in through the recording?
Oh, yeah. 59 in New Zealand.
59
Yeah, I heard the crack. That's going to bug me. Dang it.
It's almost their dead of winter, isn't it? It's like a month after the winter started.
Yeah. All right. Well, let me go ahead and start recording. I may back off and mess around with the way my inputs are going if I keep hearing that cracking, but let's get this show on the road. This is not going to be a late show, something like I did a couple of weeks ago where I kept you guys way after class. All right, here we go. Actually, you guys aren't hearing hissing online? I can hear it.
I don't. What are liver sounds?
What?
George says, hey, John, I'm not hearing those liver sounds.
So it's funny that when you said, what are liver sounds? I just assumed it was something George said.
Kevin, stop hissing.
Yeah, I can't
Kevin's
hear
hissing in the background. Someone gag Kevin.
Yeah, I was hearing the fans. Dang it. Means I can't even have my little fan on. Okay, we're going to go really fast because I got to get the show done so I don't boil alive in here.
All right.
Okay.
I'm going on mute.
Bye. Hi, this is Allison Sheridan of the NosillaCast podcast, hosted at podfeet.com, a technology geek podcast with an ever so slight Apple bias. Today is Sunday, July 9th, 2017, and this is show number 635. Before I get started this week, I want to warn you that this coming week, the show will probably be late. We're going to MacStock Expo in Chicago Friday through Monday. Now, I thought about trying to cram the show in early this week, but there's likely to be juicy content during the show that I'll be itching to tell you about right away. So I think we're looking at Tuesday for the show to come out. Now, that also means that there's no live show this coming Sunday. I tell you what, okay, here's what we do. Why don't you guys just all come to Chicago for MacStock and you can see us on Sunday anyway. That'll be perfect, okay? All right, good. Glad we got that settled. Well, I've been asking Bart a lot of questions in the back channel as I struggle to understand the documentation he has provided and our latest few sessions of homework assignments for the Programming by Stealth series. To be honest, I've been pretty frustrated every time he and Dorothy say, just read the documentation. No, he doesn't say it that way, but Dorothy does. Anyway, she actually enjoys nagging me to read the documentation. And it's not my old I don't read manuals thing. It's that it doesn't make sense to me. I didn't understand it. And I kept asking him questions. And one night, as I was badgering him away on that, he had an epiphany. He realized that he had never explained the way the documentation works, the methods within it, because the structure is second nature to him. But that's because he's been looking at this kind of documentation for years and years and years. He was making an assumption that we all understood how it worked, and he could tell by my constant badgering that I didn't follow it at all. Now, you think it's just reading, but it's not. Well, his solution to this is unique. While we recorded the audio podcast this week, he showed me in video how the documentation is created using JSDoc, and the explanations that he gave made it become clear to me how the documentation was working while I was listening to him describe it. But it would be really mean to just give you an audio file where I got to watch the video, right? So ahead of time, he created a screencast where I'm not asking the questions, where he walks through all of the same content that he explained to me. It's really pretty darn cool. I was amazed. I didn't think he could pull this off because he had to learn the newest version of ScreenFlow and do a screencast, and he started like 3 days before he delivered it. So it was pretty impressive. Anyway, go check out Programming by Stealth in either the dedicated podcast feed or in the Chit Chat Across the Pond feed. All right, segment 1 done. Saw the tweet, but not the video. Okay, yeah.
I'll post the link
to his video.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's in the blog post on podfeet.com, so it's like bounce to bounce to bounce, bounce. Okay, Conversations of Things podcast. Where's that one? Okay, here we go. And go in here. This week, I had the great honor of being on the very first episode of a new podcast called The Conversation of Things. Joe Duganzik of Smarter Home Life, who has been on our show a couple of times, is the host. And this show is going to be an interview show with tech people like me about the Internet of Things and home automation. Joe is such a cool guy. He's one of these people, that rare people you meet in life where I feel like I've known him for years, but we only met 6 months ago. In fact, we met 6 months ago to the day on when we did the first episode of Conversation of Things. We had such a blast chatting. It was so much fun. Anyway, you can listen to the audio at Smarter Home Life, but he also let me embed the video of our conversation into podfeet.com. He hasn't submitted the podcast to iTunes yet, but he's going to get on that shortly, so you'll be able to find it for later. All right. 2 down.
Wow.
What?
How many do you have?
What do you mean, how many do I have?
2 down. Like normally you have 3 or 4.
That's not it. Where is it? What do you mean? What do you mean, where did I Make Apple photo albums. I'm actually going to skip over a post because it's nice and long. I'm saving it for next week because I'm going to need content. So, but this is kind of fun. All right. I'm always stressed out on the weeks where I have to do the show with no security bits. And I had security bits this week.
Which one is this one?
This is security bits week, so it doesn't have to be as much as me.
No, I'm sorry. Which post are you about to do?
Apple photo albums.
Okay. Thank you.
You like to read along and see if I'm making any mistakes?
No, I give a post in the chat room to the people so they can go to it if there is a blog post.
Oh, okay.
This is Make Apple Photos albums?
Yeah. So I'm going to stop my voice for just a minute and change the lag. I can hear that click like crazy. Okay, I'm back. All right. Apple Photos is a lot more capable than many people realize. I'm sure I still don't use a great deal of the functionality myself because I keep discovering new things it can do and new ways to use the capabilities that I already knew about. I just discovered a couple of cool uses of keywords in Apple Photos that I'd like to tell you about. Now, before I dig into this, it's really important to realize that Apple Photos does not, by any stretch of the imagination, have the kind of keywording depth that you'll find in something like Adobe Lightroom or the old Aperture program from Apple. The Alistair Jenks type of people who have to have or love to have embedded folders of keywords pretty much to a level that might require a clinical diagnosis will not be even vaguely interested in what I'm about to teach you. For the rest of you normal people, I think I've got some tips that might come in handy. So let's set up a problem to be solved with an example. When we go on big vacations, I take an excessive number of photos. Maybe you do too. The only way you can get anyone to look at your photos is to narrow down the number you're going to show. So, of course, the first step in this process, we're all familiar with it. It's called Barting your photos, named after Bart Busschots, who described this concept. Barting your photos means throwing away a lot of them and keeping the better photos. Now, my Barting process is to go through them while I'm still on the trip and throw away, maybe 20%. But when I get home, I go through the whole albums again and I Bart them over again. Each time you go through, you're comparing the photos to a smaller set, so it's easier to eliminate another 20%. Now, at this point, it's probably still 12 times as many photos as anyone will ever want to view, but I eventually get down to the number of images I actually want to keep. My next strategy is to start marking my favorites from a given trip. I do that by using a keyword. I designate them with the words best of. A perfect example was our trip to Grand Teton National Park. I created a keyword, I guess it's keywords, but a keyword set called Teton's Best Of. Now, I normally keyword in pretty much the hardest possible way because I keep forgetting that there are easier ways. I'm hoping that by talking this through with you, I'll remember to use the easy ways. First, let's go through the hard way. You can do a get info on a single image using Command-I or going up to the menu bar and going to Window Info. In there, there's a field where you can type in keywords. If you've already created a keyword, it'll autofill as you start to type. And if it doesn't exist, Apple Photos will create the keyword. If you're doing a lot of keywording, though, you might want to open the Keyword Manager. You do that by hitting Command-K or Window Keyword Manager from the menu bar. Now, the Photos Keyword Manager doesn't support embedded keywords like I was talking about earlier. You can't say, have a keyword called flowers, and inside flowers have keywords for yellow, red, and purple flowers. This is where the Alistair Jenks types lose interest in Apple Photos. I do have to admit this lack of keyword structure does result in a giant pile of unorganized keywords in your keyword manager. Now, the good news is that Photos include something they call Quick Group. In the keyword manager, scroll until you find the keyword. You can't type to find it. You have to scroll until you can find it, but grab the one you want to use often. Then simply drag it up into the top section where it says Quick Group. Now you don't have to scroll around to find it. If you keep the keyword manager up on screen, you can click on an image and then just click on the keyword to apply. But maybe that's still too tedious. In the keyword manager, there's an Edit Keywords option, which allows you to create keystrokes to apply your favorite keywords. These don't need to be big old complex keystrokes like, Command-Shift Option F4. You can assign a single letter to a keyword. While working on my Grand Teton photos, I added the letter T as the keystroke to invoke the Teton Best Of keyword. I could select a bunch of images, hit T, or hit T one at a time as I scrolled through them. Once in a while, I'd change my mind that an image wasn't worthy of the best of title, and all I had to do was simply hit T again to remove that particular tag. Okay, that was a long, boring way of saying that you can keyword your photos. But that's only the first step in making an album people will actually view. Once I keyworded my favorite images with Teton's Best Of, I created a smart album where the rule is that the keyword says Teton's Best Of. It works really well and it's super easy to set up. Now, after I created this smart album, I realized I'd included some images that weren't actually that great. But all I had to do was tap the keyword again, and the image immediately vaporized from the album. All right, now I figured something else cool to do with this. Before I realized how much easier it was to use the keyword manager and a keystroke, I was typing in the keywords on each Photos Get Info window. But after I'd been working on it for a while, I realized that partway through I'd slipped a field, and I wasn't typing the keywords into the keyword field, I had been typing them into the description field. It was a mess. I had no idea how many images on which I'd made that mistake. So here's what I did. I created a new smart album where the description was Teton's Best Of and a date range from, well, the description was Teton's, I'm going to stop, fix that. I am sweating like you can't believe right now. Elsa takes photos that aren't that great. Yeah, I only show the good ones. It's like people think Forbes always smiles. No, I only post the ones where he smiles.
You want
and
some
a
ice
date
cubes?
Range from, yes. Oh man, I'm serious. I'm gonna melt. Teton's
Maybe
Best Of. What's that?
You want a cold washcloth?
Seriously, I'm gonna slide off my chair. I'm so hot. Okay. While I'm finding the right thing, I'm gonna turn the fan on for a second. And a date range. Let's see. So here's what I did. Okay, I like that. So I'm so hot. Okay.
You want a bigger fan? That's a tiny little thing.
It is a tiny little thing, but it's better than, shoot. Here's what I did right there. Did I get that right? Here's what I did.
John, you're right. She wouldn't last a day in Alabama.
Yeah, but okay, but you have air conditioning. I have my air conditioning on. All right.
Rose liked the jail photo.
That was a good one.
Baby jail.
Baby jail. All right, here we go. I created a new smart album where the description was Teton's Best Of. Remember, I put the wrong thing in. I put it in description instead of keywords. And then I set a date range of 6/1 to 6/3, which is when I had been in Grand Teton. This gave me an album with all the incorrectly labeled images. Now I could open the Get Info window on these images, cut the words from the description field and paste them into the keyword field. And each time I fixed one, it disappeared from my smart album. When they were all gone, I knew I'd gotten them all and I could delete the smart album. Isn't that brilliant? Well, it wasn't brilliant to start with, but I thought it was a cool solution. I had another problem with my plethora of vacation photos. On the trip, I dragged all of my photos daily from the memory card of my big girl camera into photos. I put them into named albums by date and what we saw that day so they were all neatly organized. However, I had no internets on the trip, so my iPhone shots were not in photos, and that meant they weren't available to organize. When I got back home on good internets and they all swooshed into photos, I had a problem. The images from the phone were sprinkled all about amongst my big girl camera photos. How do I find the iPhone photos and put them into my carefully crafted albums? Smart albums to the rescue again. I created a smart album with the date set to a specific day and then set the camera type to iPhone 7 Plus. Then I dragged that set to the album I'd created on the trip for that day. Next, I changed the album smarts to the next day, and I did a rinse and repeat. It only took me about 5 minutes to sort hundreds of images into the right folders using that technique. I have to say, I was pretty proud of my little self for thinking of that. Now, as much as I use Apple Photos, I'm still finding out things it can do and ways to use the tools I did know about to make better images, make albums of images people will actually view, and ways to speed up processing my images. Fan on.
Anything I can do to cool you down there?
I don't know. Find a way that I can... Okay. It's really
You do
uncomfortable.
have a nice glow about you.
Do I? All right. So next up, what's next? Okay, I don't need that one anymore. So, oh, this next one's fun. Nope, that's not it. Here it is. All right. Here we go. Going to complain about Bart. Please save pod feet. Oh, save, please, pod feet. Towels on her neck. Yeah, might need to be dripping down here. All right, save. Okay, here we go. I'm going to sing in this one. Okay. One of my favorite podcasts is Bart Bouchat's Let's Talk Photography show. He often has a panel of guests on to talk about photography techniques, but he also has shows that are just Bart teaching on a subject or simply musing about something photography related. I really like the panel episodes, and I love the Bart-only shows. They're fantastic. In episode 45, entitled Thoughts on Software, he walks through some thoughts on choosing photo imaging editing software. Not photo imaging editing. Photo imaging editing. In episode... That's not what I said to do. Well, it is what I said to do, but it's not what I meant. Okay. Command Z. What happened? Fantastic. Okay. I don't know how you got over there, but you should be gone. Escape. Okay. There we go. Why are you still there? Okay. All right.
Wait a minute.
Hmm.
I see in your text here, sings Jeopardy theme song. No, please, anything. All right, I promised I wouldn't discourage you from singing. So proceed.
No, technically it was dancing.
Oh, that's right, dancing.
He gets mad when I sing and when I dance. He just suppresses all of my joy.
If you just don't do them simultaneously, I think we're okay.
Or when anybody's there.
Looking.
They're fantastic. Okay. In episode 45, entitled Thoughts on Software, Bart walks through some thoughts on choosing software or choosing photo image editing software. He doesn't compare features, so his advice could really... God. Who edited this? Can you put a period after... well, no. Maybe a comma. He doesn't
Where do you want the comma?
Features. He doesn't compare features, comma, so his... Yeah, okay. It's a terrible sentence. I'll say something different. And remind me to rewrite that part, though.
All right.
He doesn't go through a bunch of software applications for image editing and compare features. He's kind of talking more the philosophy of software. So this advice could really apply to any software you use, not just photography software. I want you to go over and listen to this show. It's at lets-talk.ie, but I also want to talk about what he said and perhaps provide another viewpoint. Ideally, you'll stop listening to me right now and go listen to Bart and come back. Don't worry, I'll wait while you go. All right, great. I'm glad you got back. Okay, his first point in what he talked about, as you recall, because you just went off and listened to it, his first point is that no one can tell you what software is right for you. And I couldn't agree more. I can't stand it when I hear people review products and declare them good or bad, wrong or right. Like, remember when I did the 12.9-inch iPad Pro review? I didn't say it was right for you. I said it was right for me. But here's some things to think about. The worst right now are all these people reviewing the HomePod by saying, well, I already have speakers. That's not at all relevant to whether HomePod could be good for somebody else. So why say things like that? I mean, if you said it in the context of, well, I already have speakers, so it's probably not right for me, but here's the kind of person who could use it. That would be helpful information, but that's not what people say. They go, well, it's stupid because I already have speakers. It's dumb. All right. Anyway, I've managed to completely digress from the topic. Let's get back to it. Bart then discusses one of his favorite topics, follow the money. He goes through how he believes that the subscription model gives software development companies a sustainable business that can support good software development. His point was that software companies have trouble making profits that will sustain a development staff during the droughts between big upgrades. He also believes that only getting revenue after big upgrades encourages company to add fancy features that maybe users don't even need or want. Well, that sounds like a sane argument, but he used Adobe as an example, specifically their move to the Adobe Creative Cloud subscription model. As soon as I heard him talk about Adobe and trouble making profit in the same sentence, I started wondering whether this was actually true or whether he just assumed that's why they did it. I decided to do some digging and some research. Since Adobe is a publicly available company, we can actually see what their profit margin has been as a function of time. I found a resource called stockanalysison.net. It's got dashes between the words, but it's too hard to say that out loud. Anyway, this site let me specify the date range for a particular company, and it also allowed me to download an Excel file of the data to make my own graphs. I mean, what could be more fun than that, right? Anyway, I asked for financial data for Adobe from 2011 to 2017, and the data was fascinating. The short story is that in May of 2013, which is when Adobe first announced its subscription-only service, they had a net profit margin of 13%. Their profits had been in a slide for about 6 months leading up to that announcement, but after the announcement, the net profits continued to plummet. In fact, they dropped from 13% down to 6% by August of 2014. At that point, Adobe started to recover, with their profit margin finally regaining their 2013 numbers 2.5 years later in November of 2015. So they had 2.5 years of loss directly, well, it's not loss, but drop in their profit margin directly after making the announcement that you couldn't buy their products outright. That's pretty tough. By the way, I went back and looked at the NASDAQ to see if maybe it dipped, and then I realized this isn't the stock price we're talking about. This is their profit margin, so it has nothing to do with the stock market. Anyway, Adobe did continue to recover, returning to 2011 profit margins in December of 2016. The curve has continued up till today, when they're now at 22%. I put a screenshot of my Excel graph in the show notes with a link to a big version of the screenshot, and I've even uploaded the Excel file in case you want to play with it too. Well, I started talking to Steve about this giant 2.5-year dip in profit margin Adobe experienced directly after they announced the subscription model. He suggested that maybe it took that long for people to finally submit to Adobe's terms and agree to paying to rent their software. During this time, I remember Adobe coming out with a lot of new features, even though Bart says that's not what really should happen. I think those new features did convince people to abandon the software they paid so much for and sign up for the subscription model. There seems to have been a period of denial, followed by acceptance. Until recent announcements by Serif Labs about Affinity Photo, people seem to feel that they're getting good value out of paying $120 per year for Photoshop and Lightroom. By the way, you know how I hate it when people say it's $10 a month? It's not $10 a month. It's $120 per year. You cannot buy a month of this software. So don't even tell me about a monthly fee. All right, let's look at the other side of this equation. In 1987, this little company called Serif Labs was created. Over time, they've been working on products to compete with Adobe. In 2014, Serif came out with Affinity Designer for the Mac. They'd had it for Windows for a while. In 2016, they came out with Affinity Photo first for the Mac, and then later on for Windows. 2017, they came out with Affinity Photo for iPad. They've got teaser videos out for their digital asset manager, which will compete with Adobe Lightroom and be available on the iPad. The reason that's really important that Adobe Lightroom's going to, or I'm sorry, that, okay, nope. Too many mess ups. I hear that Game of Thrones. Dang nabbit. I just hit the wrong keystroke.
Do you want me to go have him turn it down?
No, I'm just teasing.
I need to go start the barbecue.
On the iPad. Okay. All right. On the iPad. Where'd it go? Now, it's significant that they're going to have this for the iPad because Adobe does not have Photoshop for iPad or even a full version of Lightroom for the iPad. They have a limited version of Lightroom only. Now, Affinity is... Oh, come on. I can't even say Affinity tonight. Maybe I need more beer. Oh, do you guys want to see the graph? I don't know if Steve gave it to you or not. It's pretty fun. No, I should stop screwing around. What did I just say? They have a limited version of Lightroom only. Also, Affinity has chosen a different business model from Adobe. Affinity charges, quick one off the reservation. More tequila, pod feet. Yeah, there you go. I've had no tequila today. Okay, come on. Right there is where I want to be. Serif has chosen a different business model from Adobe. They charge once for their software. They do not have subscription payments. And Adobe users are flocking to Affinity tools. Now, I wish I had more pure numbers to back up this statement, but Serif is a privately held British company, so they don't report on profits or any other metrics that I can find to compare to Adobe. What I can tell you is a couple of things. The community of rabid users is growing at a brisk pace. One Affinity Facebook group, of which I'm a member, already has over 4,000 members. 191,825 people have liked the official Affinity page in Facebook. Based on that, I think it's an easy stretch to estimate that at least 100,000 people have fled the Adobe subscription model and moved over to the Affinity products. The testimonials from real photographers and graphics designers doing crazy, amazing work in Affinity Photo and Affinity Designer are, they're nothing short of spectacular. There's things I'm constantly saying in these communities, I'm not worthy because of the things they're doing. I thought I had something else I thought to say. The reason Adobe is able to build sales back is that Windows 10 has compatibility issues with their lifetime versions. Ah, that's interesting. Okay.
I'm back. Where are we?
I just finished. What I can tell you is the community of rabid users.
Is it still the?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. When Serif Labs comes out with their Lightroom competitor, I predict that a much greater percentage of people will jump ship. It's not just that the Affinity line of products are a buy once model, it's that they cost far less than Adobe ever charged for their products. I know at one time Photoshop was $600. I think it was more like in the $300 range towards the end, but Affinity Photo is only $50, and Affinity Designer is also $50. That's the cost of 5 months of Adobe. What is wrong with my mouth? Maybe I'm boiling.
Which blog post are you on?
Subscription model for software.
Oh, still. Okay.
You asked me and I said yes. This is hard, okay? That's the cost. Okay. That's the cost of only 5 months of Adobe's Photoshop and Lightroom bundle. Affinity also has a lean, talented staff. I found an article dated in 2014 when Affinity Designer came out for the Mac. Affinity, or I should say Serif, only had 30 developers on staff. As of the last time the Wikipedia page was updated for Serif, their total headcount was 190. Adobe has 15,000 employees. Perhaps Adobe's profit problems stem more from a bloated staff than from an unsustainable business model. Now, I want to take this discussion a bit further. Bart argued that without a subscription model, companies are essentially forced into coming out with these big releases, adding new features people don't need or want. I'm not sure a subscription model stops that behavior. I used Office 2011 at home just about as long as I could. By the way, it's going to stop working with High Sierra. So a while ago, I jumped over to Office 365. I absolutely hate the new version of Excel in 365. I found it incredibly tedious to create the chart I made for this post. I found it difficult to see what I was doing. It was a real light interface. It was just trying to find the simplest things I wanted to do, like change the font size on the axes. That was a really long process. I could, of course, find silly things like how to fill the font with a gradient, but I couldn't find the darn bold button. I'm now paying $100 per year for a product that is much worse than what I owned before. Oh, yeah. And Excel in Office 365 is way, way slower than it was in Office 2011. So there's that. A subscription service did not save me from bloatware. To be honest, I use Google Sheets far more often than I use Excel now because, Excel is so dreadful and because it's harder for me to share files with Excel 365 than it is with Google Sheets. So Steve and I use Google Sheets to share. Microsoft has sucked all the joy out of Excel for me. I predict that companies will come out of the woodwork with models like Serif's Affinity Photo and Designer to compete with the subscription services of the big guys because people don't like it. I predict that if in 2 years I pull the Adobe profit margins, that curve will have started back downwards again because of the subscription model. As Bart said at the very beginning of his show, no one can tell you what software is right for you. We can both give you something to think about when choosing your software. Personally, I'm a Serif's Lab fangirl all the way. Now, if you cheated and read or listened without listening to Let's Talk Photography for June 2017, go listen to it now. Oh, man. Fan back.
All right, I'm going to bring you something.
You are? What are you going to bring me? Sweaty, 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 sweaty. All right, so now I can keep going with the assembly because now, oh no, I'm not ready yet. One more thing because I've got security bits is coming up, but I got to read one thing off. All right, now that one. Oh man, that feels good. I am a big believer in convection. What'd you bring me? Oh, aren't you sweet? Oh, that feels good. Thank you, dear. Okay. I just need to read the Patreon ad. All right, here we go. Mute.
Mute.
I want to give a special shout out to a longtime listener and friend. I heard the click. Come on, I'm living with this delay. I want to give a shout out to a longtime listener and friend I haven't yet met in physical space. His name is Tim Gregoire. Tim and I decided this week I cannot believe how many mistakes I'm making. This is absurd. I have heat stroke. It's going to be a long show, but not as long of recording. So yeah, this is going to be, you know what? I think there's something wrong with my, with the dock, Steve. My battery is not charging. I'm down to 24%. It's been plugged in all day.
Really?
Yeah.
That's the new Thunderbolt dock? Well, it's not so new, I guess, but.
Just clicked again when you were talking. Oh, okay.
Well, time to look at a new dock.
Yeah, they came out with the Thunderbolt 3. So, okay, here we go. I'm going to give us, okay, no, you got to actually start recording. I want to give a special shout out to a longtime listener and friend I haven't yet met in physical space. His name is Tim Gregoire. Tim decided this week to become a patron of the Podfeet podcast. He went to podfeet.com/Patreon and selected a dollar amount that worked for him, and now he helps the show keep going every single week. I can't thank you enough, Tim, and I got to tell you, Steve and I are really excited that we're actually going to meet Tim this week in Chicago. He's not coming to Macstock, but he's going to meet us anyway.
So George points out that Patreon is a subscription model.
Okay, I'm going to point that out.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Terry just joined us.
Oh, hi, Terry. You're not going to see much of the show. Here we go. Okay, I got to tell you guys something really funny happened in the live show just now. George from Tulsa pointed out that Patreon is a subscription model. That was good, George. Yeah, I was thinking about it. I'm going to be doing a thing next week. I wrote it up already, so you guys might have read it. But I'm going to be doing a thing on a tool called Parallels Toolbox, and it is also a subscription model. It is $10 a year for 5 licenses. So subscription isn't necessarily a bad thing. All right, Terry, glad to have you here.
You just think that model.
What's that?
You just think that Adobe is charging too much for their subscription model?
Well, it does cost a grip.
Compared to other functionality you get from competing software?
Yeah.
Like Affinity.
Well, you can't completely compare. I did sort of compare. It's $50 for Affinity Photo, and that would only be 5 months of Photoshop and Lightroom, but it doesn't give you a Lightroom yet. Security bits. Yeah, there we go. Don't worry, it's not going to be a short show. Last week was short. I just didn't get much to say. Oh, I can have my fan on now. Sorry about the fan noise, guys. Actually, if I turn it this way. Yeah, that's just as bad, isn't it?
Yeah, we hear the fan.
Sorry. I could have it down a little bit. Not that low. There. It's not as bad. Let me see how that sounds. Description model. Holland.
Cool. It is. Wait, you're awake? What time is it? It's like 3 a.m.?
Yeah.
No, it's not even 3. It's
making a false comparison. Compare Affinity to Photoshop Elements.
Two?
George, no. Affinity Photo does not compare to Photoshop Elements. It compares to Photoshop. Real Photoshop. That is, it doesn't do every single thing, but it's like 95% of what Photoshop can do. Seriously.
It compares more to Photoshop than Elements.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Photoshop Elements is a tiny minor, it can basically do what Apple Photos can do. Affinity Photo is a Photoshop competitor, a direct competitor, no doubt. And I wouldn't say that if I hadn't talked to a lot of photographers. And if I know you're not in Facebook, but I thought about trying to pull some of the images that people have posted, these things they've created. They're just spectacular. So these are real people.
And it runs on an iPad.
Yeah, and it runs on iPad. And the iPad version is not a crippled version. It does everything that the desktop does, just a different interface. It's amazing.
And I don't think Photoshop does that yet.
Photoshop's not on the iPad, right? Well, it's that time of the week again. It's time for Security Bits with Bart Busschots. How are we doing today, Bart?
We are doing fine, although I am quite sweaty because summer appears to have arrived in Ireland.
So, Terry, I just looked up what's the difference between Netherlands and Holland? And apparently Holland is a subset of the Netherlands. Is that right?
Yeah, isn't it like 2 regions within the Netherlands are considered Holland?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, George, I'm not saying there aren't add-ons and there aren't extensions, but a lot of those things can be installed into, I think can be installed into Affinity Design. I'm not 100% sure about that, but you need to talk to people who have used Affinity Photo before saying that it isn't, because the people I'm talking to, they say it actually is, as it can do the work they need to do. Hi, Richard. Oh, too slow. All right. I'm going to turn this off and do the final bit of recording here. Here we go. All right. No, on that track.
Patched and stay secure.
Well, that's going to wind us up for this week. Don't forget, next week's show is going to be a few days late. It's probably going to be Tuesday, and there's no live show. But do not forget to send in your dumb questions. I have not had any dumb questions in a while. You can send in those comments and suggestions by emailing me at allison@podfeet.com. You can follow me on Twitter at podfeet. Remember, everything good starts with podfeet.com. Want to become a patron? podfeet.com/Patreon. Want to go to join the Facebook community? podfeet.com/Facebook. Want to go into our Google Plus community? podfeet.com/Google Plus. You can find George from Tulsa in there. Want to contribute by using the Amazon affiliate links? Go to podfeet.com/Amazon. And if you want to join in the front of the live show, normally you could head on over to podfeet.com/live on Sunday nights at 5 p.m. Pacific time, except for next weekend, and join the friendly and enthusiastic NosillaCastaways. Thanks for listening and stay subscribed. Whew. Made it. Let's see. I'll buy the Mac version of Affinity for my daughter who taught Photoshop at the university before going to law school and get her reaction. So, George, do you know who Elaine Giles is? She has been a Photoshop instructor for many, many years. She just did a video all about Affinity Photo. I haven't watched it yet, but I understand it is quite complimentary. So she's a Photoshop instructor too. I would be interested in seeing what your daughter finds out, but there's a learning curve. But the people who know Photoshop say it's not as hard to learn as I thought it was. But I thought it was a little rough getting into it at the beginning, but I got the hang of it eventually.
Are your videos free?
Yeah. Maybe you can find that, Steve.
Are they YouTube? Well, Kevin probably knows exactly where they are because I know he's been talking to Elaine. Kevin,
has he?
Putting a link up to Elaine's Affinity Photos videos, please.
Yeah.
Well,
that would be great.
Maybe you can't easily get to it. No, I'm talking to Kevin. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. Does Kevin know you're talking to Kevin?
Well.
This fan may be making too much noise for anybody to hear you. For listening, and stay subscribed.
Oh, there they are.
You got them?
Yeah, I'll do the first one.
Adobe World does not have a lock on Pro Graphics, George. They did have a lock on Pro Graphics. They don't anymore. I mean, we're talking, like I said, actually, I wonder if I can find that in here. I found a typo in how many people liked that Affinity Photo page. No, that's not it. Let's see, what was it? Was it 117? 118. 190. What was it? There it is. No, that's not it. I said how many people liked. No, it just looked funny when I. That's odd. Okay. All right. There's a lot more to Pro Graphics than Photoshop. So a lot of things they do with for Pro Graphics is Illustrator, and that's where Affinity Designer comes in. I'm not saying it does everything, but I'm saying the lock is gone. Okay, my Mac is about to go to sleep because of this charger problem. I am going to fix that. It's just what I need. But look, I can plug it in on either side because it's USB-C. I can plug it in at any of my 4 ports.
How handy.
Okay, the Amazon Echo is going down.
That's a lot of chair. A little bit of Allison. So Rose is asking what's the Photoshop killer for the Mac. So Rose, you may not have quite understood. Affinity is both on the Mac and the iPad.
Hey, Steve, now, can you come in here? Oh no.
What?
Something was wrong. I don't know what's going on. Something bad's happening. Okay. I don't know what that was.
So Rose, Affinity is both on the Mac and the iPad, and they're roughly equivalent, except the UI is different for obvious reasons. The touch versus the mouse and trackpad interface.
Yeah. So I had been talking to you about Affinity Photo for iPad, but it's absolutely available for the Mac. It came out for the Mac first, then it came out for Windows, and now it came out for
iPad.
For the iPad. All right. Sorry, that was a little panicky right there.
You okay now?
Yeah, it was. I couldn't get the plug in, and I don't know why.
Your shirt's looking a little bit wet.
Is it me sweating, or is it from
it's the washcloth?
Oh, it's up here. Hi, Kyle. You're live on TV, you know.
Where's Kyle?
He just walked in and then walked out.
Oh, there he is. Did you wash that chicken in the bag? Yes, it's been red.
Okay. All right.
Sorry.
Yeah, definitely. Lightroom is a killer app. There's no question. Stephen, everything I've seen, I personally didn't like it, but it is a fantastic application. But when they come, you couldn't get that plugin because you don't have Photoshop. Good, George. When they come out with their Lightroom equivalent, that's when I predict the demise. So that's why I was saying that. Okay, we're going to go AIFF and C, save. Okay, I am going to say goodbye and turn on the air conditioning because I'm about to expire. Actually,
one parting comment from George. He said,
yeah, I saw that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I read it out loud. Yeah, you couldn't get the plug-in because you don't have Photoshop. That's good stuff. All right. Well, guys, thank you for coming. I am going to try not to melt here while I finish the show. We will not see you next week. See you the week after.
For those on Facebook, we might do a Facebook Live video or two.
On Sunday night? Or
just during Max Talk at one time or another.
That might be fun.
Just to have fun.
That'd be fun. All right, guys.
All right.
All right, bye. Goodbye. Let me get rid of this here. Stop.